Good morning and welcome to Title Talk. It's Monday, July 8th, and I have some new books to show you. The first one is a book by Robin Carr, The View from Alameda Island. Robin Carr has made quite a name for herself writing romance novels. You can see that little heart-shaped romance sticker. This one is about Lauren Delaney, who is celebrating her 24th wedding anniversary. Just from the outside, it looks like she has a great marriage, but she won't pretend that things are perfect anymore, and she makes the decision to defy her controlling husband, who has privately mistreated her throughout their marriage, and she files for divorce. As she starts her new life, she meets a kindred spirit, a man who is also struggling with the decision to end his unhappy marriage. But Lauren's husband wants his perfect life and wife back, and his actions are shocking. Facing an uncertain future, Lauren discovers an inner strength she didn't know she had as she fights for the love and happiness she deserves. Nancy Atherton has a new one in her Aunt Dimity series. These are very cozy mysteries. This one, she's really got the jump on the game. This is a new Christmas mystery. Takes place in her little village of Finch, England, and everyone is sick. And I can promise you that there will be a death, and the ghost of Aunt Dimity will arrive on the scene to help Laurie, who is the hero, Laurie Shepherd, solve the mystery. Nancy Atherton. A Lady's Guide to Gossip and Murder by Diane Freeman, who also wrote A Lady's Guide to Etiquette and Murder. This is also set in Great Britain. It's about an American who married into the British aristocracy and is now known as the Countess of Harley. Her original name was Frances Wynne. Her husband has died. She's happily settled in England. She stays in London while the rest of the gang goes to hunt in August at their country palaces, country homes, and she gets immersed in a shocking mystery when her friend Mary Archer is found murdered. Frances had hoped to marry Mary off to her cousin Charles, but obviously that's not going to work since Mary is now dead. Frances' neighbor, George Hazelton, helps her investigate, and they apparently get a plethora of suspects. Too many may be worse than none at all, but even more worrying is that the number of victims is increasing too, and unless Frances takes care, she'll soon find herself among them. Diane Freeman, A Lady's Guide to Gossip and Murder. The Poison Thread is another British book, actually written by someone from Great Britain, Laura Purcell, who also wrote The Silent Companions. This one is about two main characters named Dorothea Truelove, who is a do-gooder who visits prisons, and she is quite taken with the pseudo-science of phrenology, which holds to the idea that the shape of a person's skull can cast light on their darkest crimes. But she meets someone named Ruth Butterham in prison, who's poor, young, and awaiting trial for murder, and Dorothea learns that it might be possible to commit murder with no more than a needle and thread, and the story that Ruth has to tell her shakes Dorothea's belief in rationality and in the power of redemption. Can Ruth be trusted? Is she mad, or is she a murderer? Readers who enjoy Shirley Jackson's books will enjoy The Poison Thread. It is classified as a horror novel, but it's also a mystery book as well. A lot of times they have more than one category they could fall into. The Rosie Result by Graham Simpson. Graham Simpson. He's an Australian author. This is the final book in a trilogy. We had The Rosie Project and The Rosie Effect, in which Don Tillman, who is on the autism spectrum, he sought to revamp himself basically and try to turn himself into what would be considered an acceptable human who would be good husband material. And he found Rosie, and after a lot of doings, they eventually got married. And in this book, their son is about 10 years old or so, and they get a call from school saying that they believe he might be on the autism spectrum. So Don undertakes his biggest project of all, and that is to help their son overcome his autism. These books are quite humorous. I believe we read The Rosie Project in the Barb Wilson book discussion, so any of you who attend that might want to check this one out, The Rosie Result by Graham Simpson. Lorian Berenson has a new one called The Bite Club. She is one of my favorite authors. These are always about dogs and dog shows. The Bite Club is actually a book discussion group in her small Connecticut town that it's people who are in the dog show world, and they meet to discuss books. And the main character is Melanie Travis, and she is training a bulldog for a fellow dog show aficionado, and he ends up getting murdered, not the bulldog, the person whose name is Evan Major, and it somehow circles around back to members of the book club are actually the suspects, and it gets very dangerous. Melanie's life is in danger. Her Aunt Peg, who gets her involved in a lot of these situations, unveils some explosive secrets at the next meeting of the Bite Club, and those secrets, once unleashed, could pit Melanie against an unpredictable killer bent on bringing this story to an abrupt end. I do hope nothing happens to Melanie because I really like her. We have a historical novel called The Red Daughter by John Burnham Schwartz. This is based on Stalin's daughter, Svetlana Alexeyeva, who came to New York after abruptly abandoning her life in Moscow in 1967. And beside her is Peter Horvath, a young lawyer sent by the CIA to smuggle Svetlana into America. And this is just the fictionalized version of what happens. She one day accepts an invitation from the widow of the architect Frank Lloyd Wright to join them at his cult-like community at Taliesin West. That dream ended in disillusionment. She reached back out to the lawyer Peter Horvath, who had helped her get here, and it just goes on from there. So if you like historical fiction based on fact, you might well enjoy that. The Wisdom of Sally Redshoes by Ruth Hogum. She also wrote a book called Praise for the Keepers of Lost Things. They say friends make life worth living. Once a spirited, independent woman with a rebellious streak, Marcia's life was forever changed by a tragic event 12 years ago. Unable to let go of her grief, she finds comfort in her faithful canine companion Hazem and peace in the quiet lanes of her town's swimming pools. It's only when Masha begins an unlikely friendship with the mysterious Sally Redshoes, who is a bag lady with a prodigious voice and a penchant for saying just what she means, that a new world of possibilities opens up. New friendships, new opportunities, and even a chance for new love. For the first time in years, Masha has a chance to start living again. But just as Masha dares to imagine the future, her past comes roaring back. So this is billed as a whimsical, wistful affair, a novel that looks at how to live life to the full, even if you have suffered tragedy. So if you'd like a good read, you would probably enjoy Ruth Hogan's The Wisdom of Sally Redshoes. And I have 3 nonfiction books to show you. The Idle Beekeeper, The Low-Effort Natural Way to Raise Bees by Bill Anderson. If you've given any thought to raising some bees, having heard about the shortage of bees, this might be just the book for you. Doesn't look like it would be too terribly hard. It's at 638.1 AND for Bill Anderson. The Idle Beekeeper. Backwoods Witchcraft, Conjure and Folk Magic from Appalachia, depending on where you're from. It is by Jake Richards, and it can be found at 133.4 He offers up a folksy stew of family stories, lores, omens, rituals, and conjure crafts that he learned from his great-grandmother, his grandmother, and his grandfather, a Baptist minister who Jake remembers could rid someone of a fever with an egg or stop the blood in a wound. The witchcraft practiced in Appalachia is very much a folk magic of place, a tradition that honors the seen and unseen beings that inhabit the land, as well as the soil, roots, and plant life. Backwoods Witchcraft by Jake Richards. And lastly, speaking of plants and such, we have a new book from the Pollen family. Tracy, Dana, Lori, and Corky have written mostly plants. 101 delicious flexitarian recipes from the Pollen family. If you would like to cut back on your meat eating but would still like to consume a little, you might be interested in being a flexitarian. This book is at 641.563 POL. That concludes our selection of books for this week. Happy reading, and I will see you next week.